Hello, my name is Nicolás Cardozo. I'm from the Flag Lab at Universidad de los Andes in Colombia, and together with Ivana Dusparic from Trinity College Dublin in Ireland, we are going to present the work we have been doing about composition software systems as adaptation to the environment. So software systems modify their behavior with respect to the environment. And we're going to use an example of a transport management system to do this. So in this application, the system needs to manage roads, stations, buses, and the routes in which the buses flow. The base behavior of this application is that buses move around the different stations following a particular route. However, the system behavior is not always as smooth, and different alerts or special situations may arise. So for example, if you think about the behavior at a station, then buses may arrive to a station and pick up passengers or drop off passengers, but whenever the station is full, the system manager wants to close that station to redistribute the load of the passengers between the other stations, and finally skip the station that was closed for the buses, right? Here you see that the special situation that we are signaling is the full station situation. So this behavior, we define it especially as a context, and it raises an alert in the system. These alerts are solved by the adaptation that are the different actions that we take in this solved alert method. A similar behavior can be seen for the bus. So when the bus reaches a station, then passengers can go in and out of the bus, and then the bus continues its behavior. But what happens if the bus is already full when it reaches the station? Then passengers are not allowed to go in the bus, and to solve this problem and serve these passengers that are still at the station, then the system needs to send an additional bus to the station where the passengers can go in. Finally, we think about the bus parking lot. So in this situation, if the bus parking lot is empty, and as we saw with the previous adaptation, we need to send extra buses to particular points in a route, then we need to make sure that we have available buses. So whenever the parking lot is empty, we raise an alert again, and the solution for this alert is just to recall the bus back into the parking lot. As you can see, these adaptations do not need to take place independently. They can happen at the same time. And we need to manage the interaction between these adaptations. We identified 3 different types of interactions for the adaptations, and we're going to use 2 different scenarios throughout the rest of the presentation. So the 3 types of interactions that we have are that adaptations can be independent, which means that the behavior of one adaptation does not interfere or interact with the behavior of another adaptation. Adaptations can be compatible, which means that the behavior of one adaptation enhances or complements the behavior of another adaptations, or they can be conflicting, meaning that the behavior of one adaptation contradicts the behavior of the other adaptation. So if we take the scenario of the full station adaptation and the full bus adaptation, in which they both send a bus to solve the problem at a particular station or point in which the bus was, then we can think about these adaptations as being independent. But additionally, we could think about these adaptations about being compatible, because the solution to this alert, so the action that we're taking in the adaptation in both cases, is to send a bus to a particular place, and by sending a bus, we could solve both adaptations. The second scenario takes into account the full station and the depot empty adaptations, in which for the first adaptation, for the full station adaptation, we are sending a new bus to a particular route, while the depot empty adaptation is trying to take out a bus out of a particular route. And in this case, the behavior, the 2 pieces of behavior are conflicting. Managing all of these adaptations is challenging, and is challenging for 2 main reasons. The first reason is that the definition of these situations or contexts, as we call them, and the associated behavior for these situations are defined independently and at different moments in time in the application. So having a full scope of all of them, it's difficult, but it's also challenging because at runtime, these situations take place unannounced. They can take place at any time any moment in the execution of the application, but also they can take place in any particular order. So we need to manage this somehow. And existing approaches to manage this situation can actually manage the way in which adaptations interact and compose, but they have a commonality, and is that they have to predefine the behavior in which the adaptations are composing. That means that for all the possible situations, the composition of the adaptations will follow the same pattern. So, inspired in previous work in resolution of conflicts between adaptations, our proposed solution takes inspiration from two different adaptation technologies. On the one hand, we use context-oriented programming as our main adaptation technology, which enables us to have fine-grained modular adaptations at the programming language level. And on the other hand, we have reinforcement learning, which actually lets us manage interactions between adaptation and effectively learn the interactions between the adaptations.
So we utilize these two techniques into our approach that we propose called COMINA, which stands for Composing Interacting Adaptations, and it consists of three main components: context agents, and we have one of context agents for every context that can occur in the application. So one for full bus, one for full station, and so on. And this context agent is based on Q-learning. Then we also have interaction agent, again, one of each for each context, and this one is based on W-learning, which I'll introduce a bit later, and context composer, which doesn't actually learn anything by itself, but it executes adaptations or compositions based on inputs it gets from context agent and interaction agent. Now, context agent is in charge of learning how each of the adaptations executed in the system affects this particular context, so whether it's good or bad for it. It starts off with just two actions and two states. Two states are whether this particular context is active or not, and it either executes the adaptation defined for that context in the case that it's active, or it does nothing in the case that it's inactive, so it just continues normal execution of the system. So for example, if context full bus is active, it executes the adaptation which skips the next station and sends a new bus, otherwise it just continues as normal. However, there are times in the system execution that other things get executed, so other adaptations which are not part of this context. And this agent observes them, and it also incorporates them in its own learning process. So it learns how these other things that happen as reaction to other contexts, how do they affect it? We'll see later when we talk about composing adaptations that this newly executed adaptations could also be compositions. So this agent also enables the system to learn how good are adaptation compositions for this particular context. The second main component of our solution is interaction agent, and this one, unsurprisingly, as the name says, learns how different adaptations interact. State space is a combination of active, non-active statuses of all contexts that this particular agent has observed so far. So it just starts with its own context, but it builds on as it observes other contexts. And for each of these combinations, it learns, and this is where W learning comes in, it learns how important is it that the adaptation that's the best for itself, the one that context agent proposed, is that's the one that's executed, meaning how badly is it affected if some other adaptation is executed for each particular combination of active contexts. So basically, it just learns this weight, which associates with the action that was learned by context agent, but this weight is unique for each particular active context combination. So what ends up happening is if you have two contexts which are simultaneously active, which are addressed and resolved by having similar adaptations. For example, they both send a bus the way bus full and station full both send an extra bus. The weight learned for these adaptations is very low or negative because they don't need to fight which one will be executed because both accomplish the same thing. However, if the adaptations are conflicting, then this weight ends up being quite high as each adaptation needs to fight for getting its own way. And then as the system execution happens, any new context that gets observed, end up being incorporated into the overall state space so that this agent learns about all the other contexts that might be active whose adaptation might affect it. So now that we know from context agent, we know suitable adaptations or compositions. From interaction agents, we know their weights and their importance. What do we do with that information? We'll need to decide which one to execute, and that's the job of Context Composer. It collects all the adaptation suggestions from context agents, their weights, and finds the one with the highest current importance. And from this point, it can do two things. It can execute currently the highest one, or try out new things, composing different adaptations suggested by the context. So in such a way, it can see if particular composition might be able to address this joint problem that these multiple contexts being active at the same time have. So for example, if we have full bus and full station, this adaptation composer will decide to execute one or the other or their composition. And now all of this loops back to that context agent because any adaptation and any composition that's executed gets fed back into its learning process. So context agent now learns how all these compositions affect it as well. And this is exactly the part that enables all of this to happen dynamically and for Comina to be able to dynamically select either individual adaptations or compositions, as the best thing to do depends on each particular combination of contexts, which we got from interaction agent. And this is continuously updated as both context agent and interaction agents get expanded by observing new contexts and combinations. So this enables Comina to do it dynamically rather than being predefined to a static decision which context gets priority.
So to evaluate Comina, we take into account the effectiveness of our technique in solving the alerts raised by the system, and also the effect of these combinations of adaptations in the execution of the system, which we measure taking into account the average delay time of passengers in reaching their destination. So going back to the two situations that we described at the beginning of this presentation, then we first take into account the combination of the full station and full bus adaptations and observe how many alerts are raised when we take into account one over the other. So if we take into account the first the full bus adaptation using the Comina technique, choosing in the first two columns, choosing first the individual adaptations, so choosing just the full bus adaptation, or composing the full bus adaptation with the full station adaptation dynamically, we observe that the number of alerts raised by the system is higher than the number of alerts raised by the system using a predefined composition mechanism, as it works with the with context-oriented programming. So here, having less alerts is a better result. A similar behavior can be observed when we use the full station adaptation. So in the full station adaptation, we observe a similar pattern where the alerts raised using North Comina technique are higher than the alerts raised using the predefined solution. But if we look at the situation taking into account the two adaptations together in which Comina, even in the individual case, chooses just one adaptation, but it chooses for the particular situation which is the best adaptation, we observe that the number of alerts raised decreases significantly in contrast with, for example, the Folbos, just solving for the Folbos adaptation. And again, we observe that the predefined adaptation is still better, so it raises less alerts than the ones found by Comina. And here, interestingly, you see that choosing always the boss adaptation first in the predefined case is better than choosing always the full station adaptation first. And this is because the adaptations, as we mentioned before, are independent or complementary. So it makes sense that solving for one particular adaptation always is better than solving for the other. In this particular case, the solution is better to choose always the full boss adaptation first, but that is just by chance. We could have as well have choosing solving always the full station adaptation first with a lower number of alerts. What is interesting about Comina in these results is that you can see that composing the adaptations is always better than not composing the adaptation, than choosing just one adaptation, and this Comina can decide. And even better, if we take into account the case where both adaptations are being chosen dynamically, then we can see that the number of alerts raised by the system is a lot lower. This behavior is confirmed by the evaluation of the average delay per passengers that we observe in the system. So the delay of a passenger in reaching its destination, where you can see the behavior of Comina choosing the individual adaptation or the composable adaptation is comparable with each other in the rightmost part of the graph, which is the exploitation part, while the leftmost part of that graph is a little bit more erratic because that is the process in which Comina is learning how the adaptations should interact. If we go into the conflicting case where we have the full station adaptation and the depot empty adaptation, we see a similar behavior as before. So in the case in which Comina is choosing just the individual adaptation, we see a lower number of alerts being raised than in the composable case, either when we choose the just to go for the full station or for the depot empty adaptation. And again, as before, when we choose both adaptations in which Comina is deciding which of the adaptations is most appropriate for the particular situation to choose individually, we see that the number of alerts decreases as well. So here, what we have is that choosing for one individual adaptation is better than choosing for the composed adaptation. So solving first for one of the adaptations and then the other, regardless of their order. And this is happening because the adaptations are conflicting. So of course, applying just one of the adaptations is better than applying both of them. And similarly as before, if we take into account the average delay time of the passengers, we observe in the exploitation phase that the delay time for passengers are comparable. So to conclude our presentation, we have presented a technique for learning the way in which adaptations are composed based on their interactions. So this is a good approach, as we saw from these early results, because we are not predefining the way in which adaptations are composed for all possible situations or even a little bit dynamically, but the system can learn the best way, what is best for the system based on our learning agents. And we can manage the three types of adaptations that we identified, which are the independent, compatible, and conflictive adaptations. And this work that we're presenting today is early results from our work and early results for Comina, and the directions of future work. With the directions of future work, we're trying to make Comina a little bit more robust, exploring different types of relationships between the adaptations, not just simple interactions we are currently using, enabling the use of partial composition of adaptations. So rather than composing just full adaptations, being able to compose individual actions in these adaptations, and of course, increasing the scalability and the performance of the emerging behavior. So thank you for your attention. We are again Nicolás Cardozo from Universidad de los Andes and Ivana Dusparic from Trinity College Dublin.